Welcome, welcome to another weekly Black History Live with Posha Malcolm. My apologies for starting at 9. However, I'm getting something went wrong with YouTube, so there's no chat. But we have to go on. I've tried it several times and it's like that. I know there has been issues with YouTube lately, but they have been fixing them. So hopefully this one will be fixed as well. Welcome again to another weekly Black History Live with Posha Malcolm. It's September the 16th, 2025, and tonight we'll be talking about the system of slavery and what it is all about. So, as usual, I'm going to read a quote from a black quote concerning, it could be from a black figure or from someone else. So this is from the book 5,000 Years of Slavery by Marjorie Gann and Janet Willing. Slavery is in some ways the same whenever and wherever it is practiced. It wrenches people away from everything dear to them: homeland, languages, family, and friends. It strips them of the right to choose their work, their amusements, their friends, their clothes, and sometimes even their names. Above all, it denies the fact that every human being has feelings of love and a need to be loved. If we are to put an end to slavery in the world we live in, the first step is to learn about it. Who is recognized as the first liberator of the Americas? I'm sorry that there's no chat. There's no chat coming up on this live. Hopefully, when the stream is finished, you can leave your comments. I'm sorry about that. I'm Posha Malcolm. I create Black history content to inspire and motivate. Before we begin, this live is for informational purposes only. I'm on a learning journey just like you, and the stories I share come from research and study. I may not pronounce every word perfectly, but what matters most is uncovering the history, lessons, and inspiration behind these stories. Let's begin. Let me ask you, when you hear the word slavery, what image comes to mind? Is it an ancient empire, a plantations in the Americas, or something happening right now? There's no chat, so I can't ask you to type it in the chat, but after, please do share it when the stream is finished. And I thank you for your presence. What we mean by system of slavery. Slavery isn't a single event, it's a system, a deliberate way of controlling people for profit. Historically, it meant people were literally owned as property, denied freedom, and forced to work under threat of violence. For example, chattel slavery. Chattel slavery is a system where enslaved people are considered the personal property or chattels of their enslavers and can be bought, sold, or traded like any other possession. This dehumanizing practice where enslaved individuals are denied fundamental human rights, and we know them. Plantation slavery, another type. Plantation slavery was an economic system in the Americas that relied on the forced, often chattel labor of enslaved people, primarily Africans and their descendants, to produce cash crops like cotton, tobacco, rice, and sugar for profit. And I can tell you that in Jamaica, we have had a lot of sugar plantations. I even grown up seeing my father planting sugar, a lot of sugar, and the truck would come and harvest that sugar and take it to the factory where they produce the sugar, and we call it brown sugar. People became enslaved through war, raids, kidnapping, being born to an enslaved mother, or even being sold for debts. And we talked about that last week. Families were torn apart, abuse was constant. Let's talk about modern slavery today. Slavery didn't just vanish. It hasn't vanished. It changed its form. Today we see modern slavery, forced labor, human trafficking, debt bondage, forced marriage. I've heard a lady gave her testimony of how she was forced into a marriage that she didn't want. And when the family didn't want her, that family of the male, the husband, she was treated so badly that she had to run away. It's less visible, but still affects tens of millions worldwide, especially our children. Like historic slavery, it thrives because it's profitable and hidden. By understanding the old system, we can better fight its modern forms. And we know about child trafficking, trafficking of women, trafficking. And I believe that I may have been one of those persons, but the person who was doing it were using another form of system to get women to sign up. And that's for another day. But I believe when I look at everything, it was a form of trafficking. One of the things they do when you go in, they say, okay, we'll offer you a job. And when you go there, use your passport, and when everything is processed, then they'll hold on to your documents, your passport, your work permit, and all of that, and force you into labor. So it's a form of trafficking. So we know that these slavery still exists, but it's in a different form. Now we're going to touch on the transatlantic slave trade. We are going to the era most people think of when they hear slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. It operated from the 15th through the late 19th century. So that would be about 1401 to about 1900s. Millions of women, men, children, mostly from West and Central Africa, were forcibly transported to the Americas. And countries from which enslaved people were taken during the transatlantic trade slave in West and Central Africa include Senegal, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, hope I pronounce it properly, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Ghana or Guinea. Hopefully, I got it properly. The Republic of the Congo, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So you see how many places, how many Western and Central African countries. And also, the Mali Empire was also a significant source of enslaved people in West Africa before the transatlantic slave even began seriously. It was something, slavery was something, as we talked about last week, that has been around for a long time. Now, the triangular trade, how it worked, right? That country to country. European ships carried manufactured goods to Africa. So let me see if I can draw it on a map. Hold on, just demonstrate. So we have the European ship going to Africa. So this is Africa, the continent, and this is Europe. Hopefully I have it correct. So they carry manufactured goods. The primary European nations involved in the transatlantic slave trade were Portugal, which were the first, then Great Britain, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and Denmark joined. Portugal was the first to establish a significant trade in Africa's slaves, initiating the trade to Brazil in 1526. So in Brazil, they did a large shipment of slaves, enslaved persons. By the 18th century, Great Britain became the largest carrier of enslaved Africans, transporting the majority to the Caribbean and North America, as we know. So they exchanged them for captive Africans. So now captive Africans go back to Europe. Those captives endure the Middle Passage, I tell you. So here we have to Africa, but then they are also transporting to they're to the Americas. They call it the Americas: Mexico, the United States, Canada, and the United States used to be, because people didn't have like maps and all of that. So it's just landmass, right? Now, those captives endured the Middle Passage. So this is basically, if you know where the Americas is, you know, they move it from the Americas. And then the plantations, the sugar, the this, the that, they transport it back to Europe. So that's how you have the triangular system of trade. Those captives endured the Middle Passage across the Atlantic under horrific conditions. The Middle Passage refers to the forced, horrific sea voyage of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade. This brutal stage of the triangular trade involved inhumane conditions on slave ships, where high mortality rates due to disease and violence were common. Millions of Africans endured this journey, which was a foundational element of the system of racial slavery and its economic engine. So it was a system that has been developed. Shackled, crammed below decks with little food or air, 1.2 to 2.4 million died during the voyage alone. Many more perished during capture or in season camps after arrival. So before, when they were being captured, or when not just during the Middle Passage, but also when they reached, and we know that some of them had to deal with the weather, the cold weather that they weren't used to. And many of them in the Middle Passage, they died. Some even jump off board because they prefer death than to be under bondage. Why? Because colonies needed cheap labor for sugar, tobacco, cotton, and mining. To justify it, and this is something that may seem hard, but it is a fact. To justify it, Europeans developed false ideas of racial superiority and even claimed religious permission. I've met a young lady. Well, it was a discussion. We were talking. Um, I'm not going to say the setting, but it was a professional setting. And she expressed that she's not into religion because of this. So it is a fact that these things, happened. Papal decrees like Don Diversas 1452 and Romanus Pontifex 1454 gave crowns, which are like kings, the right to endure um, kings and their kingdoms, rather, the right to enslave non-Christians. Over time, race became the key justification. So we are now, there's a section that I'm going to, or maybe I might do it. So papal decrees similar to these include Roman, we talked about that already. Romanus Pontifex, which provided religious justification for European imperialism and the enslavement of non-Christians in Africa and the Americas, respectively. These bulls issued authorized Portugal's conquest and enslavement of pagans in Africa and the Americas by granting Christian nations dominion over newly discovered lands. This is why a lot of people are against Christianity and the Bible. They say the church condoned slavery. And as we can see, it is true that the church, which is the papal church, which was the religious Christianity religion at the time. But I must say there are other beliefs to that, in terms of there were other Christians that did not believe in this slavery. But it is what it is. It's a part of our history. And so I watched this movie. It was a movie, and the Vikings, I think it was, those persons who dressed like the Vikings and stuff. And it, at that time, I did not understand fully, but when I read this, I truly understand what took place. So, under Christianity, I am a Christian, and under Christianity, they were given the authority that those who were non-Christians, those who did not accept the views of this religion, that they are to be enslaved. It was okay for them to be enslaved. Also, we see here where they, we see here that it was also about racial superiority. And until this day, these two things have affected humanity. So, the human cost and legal consequences. As the trade expanded, laws hardened. Children born to enslaved mothers were automatically enslaved. And if you look at my shorts on the channel, you will recognize that persons who looked have pale skin, who had pale skin because they were born to enslaved mothers, they were considered slaves. Okay? So that's a fact. We have seen that. A racial caste system emerged. Enslaved Africans were treated as merchandise, sold at markets like any other goods. Yet, yet, there's something that I wanted to share, but I wasn't able to put it in. But maybe I'll be able to share it for you to get a idea of. It's a story. It's probably might be a bit too long, and I don't want the live to be long, especially because I'm not able to interact with you via the chat. But yes, yet their resistance never stopped. On the coast, on ships, on plantations, and even in courts, as we see in my shorts, that under different circumstances there have been resistance. First resistance figure one off is Gaspar Yanga, often called El Primer Liberador de America, the first liberator of the Americas. Yanga was an enslaved African brought to New Spain, which is now Mexico, in the 1500s. He escaped and led a community of Maroons. And we know about Maroons in Jamaica because they live in the cockpit country. And they, in Jamaica, have signed a treaty that, a large body, which as a large body of land from different parishes were Maroon land. It was established, and that treaty was passed. Also in Canada, with the native people, the people of the land, they have also signed treaties for the land that, treaty to keep. But now I must say that they have such a small amount of land compared to all the land that they had, because the king needed more land. And so Yanga, as an African slave brought from Africa, yes, he escaped and led a community of Maroons, runaway enslaved people in the mountains near Veracruz. For decades, they resisted Spanish attacks. In 1618, they negotiated a treaty with the Spanish crown, granting their freedom and self-rule. Just like in Jamaica, they had their governance. The only time the government of Jamaica goes there, like police or authorities, is when somebody has died. But other than that, they run their Maroon community. And it's usually peaceful, right? Long before famous revolutions, Yanga showed that enslaved people were not passive victims. They organized, fought back, and built new societies. And here we are today. Why this matters today? Understanding this history is not just about the past. It explains one, why racial ideas took hold. Two, why economic inequality still echoes today. And three, why remembering matters. We cannot change the future if we don't know what took place in the past. The United Nations, they have even marked an International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, not just to honor victims, but to spur action to dismantle ongoing injustices. And they say when there's injustice for one, there's injustice for all, because one way or another, it affects us all. Now, I can't put in the chat the questions for you to reply to the answer in the chat of what I want to ask, but I'm going to ask and I'm going to give you the answer. All right, because I want us to engage. So hopefully next week I won't have this system as YouTube tell me that something went wrong and I'm not sure what happened. One, where did most enslaved Africans transported across the Atlantic come from? Where did they come from? You can answer, but you won't be able to put it in the chat. They actually came from West and Central Africa. And we said some of those countries were from Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Cameroon, right? And the Republic of the Congo, Angola, places like those. Question 2. What was the Middle Passage? The brutal transatlantic voyage enslaved Africans during between Africa and the Americas. So that process of traveling on the ships to from Africa to the Americas. Yes, to the Americas, which was the new land that they explore and found, but they have not, how would I say, it was always here and it was always inhabited. So the Middle Passage is the experience that those enslaved Africans experience while going through the transatlantic voyage. Question 3. Name one cash crop produced largely by enslaved laborers in the Americas. And I talked about the experience back home that my dad used to plant this crop. And we used to harvest it. The truck used to come and collect it. And then we we get paid. Unlike back then, they never used to pay them for their labor. They actually took them from Africa to come and do these things. So you see how far we have come? So it's sugar, cotton, tobacco, and coffee. Yes. The other day I saw Maya doing interview with this gentleman from Africa and the continent, but I don't remember exactly where he's from. But man, that gentleman just blew my mind with his humbleness and also the impact that he has done in his country. And the plant, the tobacco flower is so beautiful. I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful, to look at. So I just wanted to add that there. Sugar. They used to dry the sugar into some little cubes and some little shapes. Not sure. They used to shape them, and that's how they transport them. The dry sugar. And when I went to the museum when we had Black History, I went to a particular museum in Ontario, not remembering it right now. She showed me how the sugar looked. Sugar used to be pressed down and it would be like hard, like a stone, right? And they would transport it in that shape, whatever shape it is, they would make it into and transport it. And they would put it at the window of their dwelling, and that tells that they could afford sugar. So it was high commodity to have sugar. Then that means you're living higher standard of living. Question 4. What papal decrees gave Portugal and Spain religious cover to ensure non-Christians? To enslave non-Christians, rather. What papal decrees gave Portugal and Spain religious cover to enslave non-Christians? And we know about two of them, the Don de Versas, hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, and Romanus Pontifex. That's 1454. And as I said before, we can always research for ourselves. And question 5, who is recognized as the first liberator of the Americas? And the answer is an African leader in colonial Mexico who led a successful Maroon community and negotiated freedom. So he signed a treaty with the Spaniard, Gaspar Yanga, an African who escaped slavery in colonial Mexico, who led a successful Maroon community and negotiated their freedom. I just want to say that we have come to the end of our weekly Black History Live. This is the second one since it began last week, Tuesday, and I hope to continue. As I carry on, I'll bring new information and also go in depth in different areas, and I bring stories of persons and also the journey of where we were and where we are. And as it was said in here, that slavery has not ended. Slavery has not ended, but it has changed its form, like with human trafficking, right? And slavery is for various reasons, but the main reason is for profit, like the transatlantic slave trade. Thank you for joining this journey tonight. We have seen how the system of slavery was not an accident, but a deliberate structure, and how even in its darkest days, people like Gaspar Yanga stood up for freedom. It takes courage. And so I implore you, in whatever way that you see injustice or you see certain things, speak up, get that courage, and make a difference in your community. If this inspires you, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can learn these hidden histories. Comment about what surprised you most tonight. After my live, remember, learning our history is not just remembrance, it's empowerment. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, keep searching, and keep telling these stories, and keep on keeping on. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Take care until next week, Tuesday at 9 p.m. for more Black History. Bye-bye.